The 2024 Cayenne S. For the 24 model year, the entire Cayenne lineup has received a mid-cycle refresh. Now, before we talk about anything else, let's talk about the interior and exterior space. The exterior styling has been slightly updated in the front and rear fascias, but you have to be a Porsche nut to be able to tell the difference, honestly. The interior space, though, let's talk about it. It's the most controversial bit about this car. Gone is the traditional gauge cluster and analog tach, and in its place is a 12.6-inch curved display. While the information is nearly identical to what you got in the old Cayenne with some more screen customization, it does take away from some of the Porsche uniqueness of the cabin. I understand where people are coming from, but the information is great, the screen is fast acting, and apparently this is what their customers want. And this is going to be the same screen that you're probably going to see in the updated 992.2, 911, whenever that comes along. Now, when it comes to the infotainment screen, it's very large, it's very fast acting, and honestly, it's great. While you can get an auxiliary screen for the passenger, and Porsche claims that the screen is great because it allows the passenger to take over some of the infotainment functions. Personally, I think you should just skip that option. If you want your passenger to watch movies or whatever, just have them use their phone. It's largely a waste of money in my approximation. The center screen is not that far away and has all of the core things you need anyway. They've consolidated some of the HVAC controls. Thankfully, they're all still physical and easy to use. And most of the drive mode controls now have been buried in either the infotainment or on the steering wheel itself. When it comes to the cabin, this is largely a carryover space when it comes to the rest of the practicality and usability of the regular Cayenne. So you have good visibility, excellent seating options, and the thing I'm going to bring up next is the joy or the pain of the Cayenne is nearly every option is a la carte. So you can make this thing look absolutely ridiculous in comparison to a press car. You can do crazy exterior colors. You can make this vehicle feel very, very expensive. And the one thing that it does well is that intangible. Everything in this car feels expensive, from the leather options to the touch points, the way the door feels like it has 300 pounds of sound deadening. All of the subtle attention to detail that you're expecting in a six-figure SUV is present here. The con is, again, you're paying for all of it. You can make this a ridiculously expensive car in the configurator if you so choose to. Now, when it comes to the rest of the interior practicality or space, you get a 15-watt charging pad here in the center console area. While there isn't the most center storage, particularly compared to some of its other SUV rivals, I think it's good enough. But to Mark's point, it is a little bit of a disappointment that there isn't more interior nooks and crannies for all your crap. The door pockets are very large, but according to Mark, not as big as what you get on the GLS or X7. I don't find it offensive. The rear seats are more than large enough for a full-size adult to fit behind a 6-foot-tall driver like myself. And when it comes to trunk space, yes, this is smaller than the X5 and GLE. With the rear seats up, you're looking at a little bit less than 30 cubic feet of cargo capacity. With the rear seats down, you're looking at about 60. In comparison to the X7 or the GLE, they're both pushing over 70 with all the seats folded down. That is one of the compromises you're gonna have to deal with when it comes to the Cayenne. Past that though, I think it's time for us to head in the shop and put this thing up on the lift. In the shop with our 2024 Cayenne S. This thing's absolutely packed with snow and water, which means it's become a water feature. This is a E3.2 generation Cayenne, which makes it its mid-cycle refresh. Here's a quick refresher though on what the third generation Cayenne is. It's on MLB Evo, which is VAG's global rear-wheel drive premium SUV architecture. It's the same thing that underpins products like the Bentley Bentayga, the Lamborghini Urus, the Q7, and the Q8. The Cayenne can be had as a regular SUV body or the coupe variant, which we don't have. The coupe is supposed to be sportier and lighter. Now, the secret sauce to what makes the Cayenne drive so well are all of its electromechanical systems, and that's what's been updated for the E3.2 generation. So yes, it's still multi-link front and rear. It has all aluminum suspension components other than the rear subframe. It's covered up with NVH panels and aero panels and composite panels that make it more aerodynamic and quieter than all of its lesser German rivals. But the main thing is suspension tuning and all those subsystems. So let's talk about shock technology. PASM, which is Porsche's fancy acronym for their adaptive dampers, is now standard in the base Cayenne and across the entire Cayenne lineup. Their shock technology has changed. They've gone from a 1-valve damper where compression and rebound were tied to a 2-valve damper where now they can divorce those settings, which gives them better control at low speed ride quality, so for the small imperfections you're dealing with while you're putting around town, and with high speed body control, pitch and dive. The other thing they revised is their air suspension. It is not standard on the base Cayenne or Cayenne S, but it is an option, and much like everything else on this car, you can get it a la carte. Main thing they changed there is their air shocks themselves. They went from a 3-chamber air shock to a 2-chamber air shock. The main reason they did that is it speeds up the reactivity of the air bladders themselves. It allows them to go firmer or softer on command. Now, why should you get the air dampers or the air shocks? Well, it makes the vehicle ride better. It gives it a better range of adjustment, so it can go even softer than the steel springs and even firmer, and it helps with aero as it lowers the vehicle at higher speeds and all the other fun stuff. It is an option. It is very expensive, but you should get it, particularly in a car that's already $100,000. Now, let's talk about the other electromechanical systems. You can still get the 48-volt adaptive sway bars known as PDCC. You can get PTV Plus, which is an optional rear differential on this thing. And you can also get rear steer, which is a great option in the Cayenne. This, of course, does not have it, as it is a weird press car. Now, let's talk about the other changes they made. First off, to their wheel and tire options. They've expanded the wheel and tire options for this vehicle. They've given them a larger outside diameter. They've also revised the brakes specifically to the Cayenne S. They are bigger rotors than they used to be. As of today, you cannot get carbon ceramics in the Cayenne S, though I'm sure that'll change in the future. And they've revised their e-booster to their brake booster, but it is not a brake-by-wire system. It is still a hydraulic feedback to the pedal, which is exactly what you want in a product like this. The best thing about the Cayenne is, despite its immense weight, its tall height, is Porsche, through all these various electromechanical subsystems, have done their best to make this drive like a Porsche product. Yes, it's not a sports car, but it's close. And when you compare this to something like a Range Rover definitely is softer. The Porsche is definitely on the firm side, yet it is still compliant. But what you get in exchange for an ultra plush ride is excellent body control and none of that boatiness you're expecting from an SUV of this size. The next thing to talk about is drivetrains. They can be either had as a hybrid or just a regular internal combustion engine. The basic Cayenne, which comes with a single turbo V6, gets a power output increase of about 13 or 14 horsepower. More importantly, almost 40 foot-pounds of torque. The S gets a V8 as standard. In the E3.1, you got a V6. You get 34 more horsepower, almost 40 foot-pounds of torque, extra over the old V6. And the big thing is you get V8 noises. It sounds amazing, and it puts its power down through an 8-speed automatic, which is really, really well programmed. Now, the other thing to talk about for the Cayenne lineup is you can get these as plug-in hybrids. They've revised the motor output. It now makes 174 horsepower. That electric motor sits between the internal combustion engine and the gearbox. And it has a battery in the rear subframe, which is increased in size to 25.9 kilowatt hours. It allows this vehicle to get 20 to 30 miles of range. The interesting thing, for me at least, is the hybrid variants have a very high output, and I'm curious to see what people actually end up buying, as 95% of these vehicles are lease machines anyway. With that all said, though, let's go take this for a quick drive with Mark on our favorite farm roads. V8 Cayenne S 2024 E3.2. Yeah. I'm an important businessman or woman. I have lots of disposable income. I go flying in my SUV when I'm late to work. So this does not have many of the performance options equipped. I've exhausted this point in all the various Porsche videos. If you want to equip one of these things out pimp, you're going to pay out the nose. The only thing this car has as a real performance option is the optional air ride. You and I have both driven pretty much every Porsche at this point. What do you think, Mark?
Does this have rear steer or no?
It does not.
Oh. Okay, well, in terms of this, I'm going to kind of get my spiel out of the way right away, and then I'll let you go into it. I will say, before the Porsche people get all upset, this is probably the best two-row SUV, drivability-wise, dynamics, ride quality, all of those things and all the engineering that goes into it. Even without all those options, it is on another level. And it's going to be for a couple different people. It's going to be for somebody that says, how much is it? I don't care. I'll spend anything. It's for the other people that say, I see a Porsche badge, I want an SUV with a Porsche badge, or it's for the third person who just loves the engineering and the detail that goes into the engineering that makes this drive great as a two-row SUV. And then that's where it ends, because when you look at what you're getting here for the price, it's counterintuitive, and I can make a lot more excuses for it if it was a sports car. And it's not. It's a two-row SUV. So the things that Porsche does great has also been evaporated by the fact that there's now about 70,000 different two-row SUVs on the market, and Porsche doesn't spend enough time making this a really, really good daily driver in terms of the usability, functionality that you want from a two-row SUV. And that's where it really hurts for the price point. And coming from somebody that has the money to buy a Cayenne, I purely would not buy this because it doesn't do the functionality things good enough outside of the driving experience. It doesn't make up for the fact that this is $40,000 more than an X5 or even a commodity SUV that I can put things in the door. I have a usable center console. I have good storage space for my kids and my family. This, what you're doing right now, is not $40,000 enough for me.
The counterpoint is that you can do this in your SUV. You're a busy person. You don't have time, like many of our viewers tell us, to have a vehicle that does everything. And if they did, multiple vehicles, if they did, they would never get to drive it. So if you're driving to work, you gotta haul your kids or do whatever, and you need a two-row SUV and you still want it to drive well, this is the best one that exists. It rides the best. It is the most comfortable if you don't want a total boat. And if you want a total boat, you're gonna buy a Range Rover. Yeah. This is a car that all the body control and all the body motions, even without the variable 48-volt sway bars, is better than anything BMW currently makes. The damping, despite it being almost, hot hatch, like Golf R levels of handling on a back road, doesn't jostle your spine loose. The V8 is tremendous. While yes, it's not as powerful in this spec as an X5M, it sounds good. There's still no fake engine noise. The trans tuning is amazing. I mean, this is a car for somebody who wants something that is almost mechanically perfect in this class of vehicle and doesn't care how much it costs. And if you're that person, this thing is amazing. My one thing I will say is, for those who do have this kind of money, and we have a viewer who tells us this all the time, they own the prior gen GTS, which honestly, I talked about it in the shop. Are there mechanical improvements over the E3.1? Yes, the dampers are marginally better and the interior space is marginally better. The problem is an equivalently equipped prior generation GTS is $30,000 less than the new Cayenne S. And this car has gotten to the point where I will argue, and I'll start to agree with you, I think it's too much money for what you're getting in the end. If you well equip a Cayenne S, what you and I would want in a luxury SUV like this, it's over $135,000, which is just, it's so much money.
And I mean, I don't want to beat a dead horse with this, but I don't even care about the money part. I care about the fact that, and we had this argument with the CX-90, we really cracked down on Mazda for making a three-row that didn't understand what you want out of a hauler. Mm-hmm. And this is Porsche's biggest vehicle. Like, you're buying this not because you can't have a 911 or a 718 or a Panamera. You're buying this because you want the biggest Porsche SUV. And it fails to understand, much like the Mazda does with the CX-90, that the American market expects the things that you need in a family vehicle. I love this thing, but I would take an X5 or something even way less than this. You just trade off the dynamics for the usability over this almost every single time, regardless of money. Even if this thing was less money, I'd still choose other vehicles just because of that.
The argument that Porsche is going to have, and it clearly is working for them, is if you want more space, buy something else. So with that, Mark, as I send us off, on our favorite farm road, let's head into the final thoughts, sir.
All right.
Can't wait to see my legal team. They need me. final thoughts on the 2024 Cayenne S. Porsche has built yet another generation of Cayenne for their specific customer, someone who has a lot of disposable income, and it's for that person who also prioritizes driving dynamics over nearly everything else, because that's what it does better than its two closest German rivals. It drives better, it has better body control, better inputs, and I think it has better drivetrain calibration than the GLE and X5. It also has an extra layer of solidity to its cabin. All of the material choices and the general build quality does feel a cut above the BMW and Mercedes. You can also customize this car in a way you cannot the X5 and GLE. You can do crazy interior and exterior colors and options and trim pieces, and you can mix and match what performance options you want in a way you can't do with the X5 and the GLE. Its con is it's way more money. It's $20,000 to $30,000 more, at least in the case of the X5 with similar options, and it is smaller. It does have less utility. It's a smaller trunk and just less interior storage than its two rivals. So if you're someone who prioritizes space and value, like Mark, over driving dynamics, at least in their SUV, you're not going to buy this thing. But if you're someone who can live with the size and values the way it drives above everything else, the Cayenne is a excellent two-row SUV. So thanks for watching. Hope to see you soon.